Kristen Heemstra, your personal college and career coach, and we are going to be talking in this segment, Common Data Set Part 2, about how to find out what schools are going to use to select incoming students on. So I have several different common data sets pulled up here. I have Arizona State University, I have Yale, and I have Loyola University of Chicago. So let's start with Arizona State. You're going to come down when you look at the school you want. Again, you just Google the name of the school and the term common data set. Once you do that, you'll pull up the link to wherever they're hiding their data. And what we want to know, we've already talked about first year admission rates and stuff like that, but we want to know the basis for selection. How are they evaluating who they let in? So, basis for selection. And this will tell you when the application comes in theory, how the person at the other end is receiving it. So we know from Arizona State that the rigor is important, but it's not very important. Class rank is very important, and GPA is very important, and standardized test scores are very important. So that's kind of interesting. They do not want to read an essay over there, people. They just do not want to read it. They're not even considering that. They don't consider recommendations. So this is a school we would consider to be a numbers school. They are going to crunch the numbers and either you're in or you're out. They're not doing a holistic review per se, and that they're not trying to learn more about the student or anything like that. They do recommend the ACT or SAT, and for some programs, they require it. So what does that mean? Well, they're not using the essay component. And what are their numbers like? Well, of those who submitted their scores, you can see here where the 50%, this is the 50th percentile in between 25th and 70th. So 25% are lower, 25% are higher. So they're writing 750 to 670, or 570 to 670, 560 to 690. This is where 50% of their students are coming in from. ACT Composite is a 22 to a 29. And you can see the breakdown. So about less than half of their incoming classes in the 600 range. They have quite a few 500s. They even have a few 400s. And you can just see the breakdown. People who submitted their class rank, they had about 67% submit their class rank. Most of the students, almost 90%, were in the top half of their graduating class. And then the average GPA, and typically this is weighted, not all the time, but most of the time it's weighted, is a 3.5. So, and then 94% of the students submitted a GPA. Who's not submitting a GPA? A lot of homeschoolers will not have a GPA. Your Quaker schools often have kind of a read. They have a file on you, not necessarily give grades. So those are folks who are not submitting a GPA. And sometimes your international students are coming in with different situations in terms of grades and stuff. So those are the selection components they're using. They do not have early decision. They do not have early action, which means they have one deadline, fall applicants. They tell you about their applicants here. They have fall, spring, and summer in which students can transfer if that's something you're interested in. They have a certain amount of credits, most schools do, that you can transfer. And then we'll talk about academic offerings policies and student life and money in the next one. So, but that is Arizona State. And if you look at, let's compare it to Yale for kicks and giggles. So Yale's going to have different criteria. So we're going to come down pass enrollment and persistence. We already talked about that, which they're going to have a pretty high level of. And again, we're doing basis for selection. So for Yale, rigor, super important, rank, all these things are very important. They are doing a holistic read. They want to know what your essays say, what other people are saying about you, what your extracurricular activities. They may or may not interview you. Interviews with Yale are typically done through the alumni. So they're considered, but they're not necessarily the thing that will make or break your application. If you have talents, all these things matter to Yale. And then these other things are considered. They require the SAT or the ACT. And right now, they also like subject tests and AP scores, all of these things they will use for admissions decisions. Their middle 50 percentile is between a 720 and a 770 on the SAT and a 730 and a 790 in the math, whereas their ACT is 33 to 35. 25% are higher, 25% are lower. Most of their incoming freshmen, 85% of them, all have scores in the 700 to 800 range. So that can tell you a lot about a school right there. Now, this is interesting. How many students are ranked? About 30% of the students who submitted their high school rank. This private schools typically don't rank. Some states don't rank. Charter schools often don't rank. Science and math schools often don't rank. So ranking is not prevalent in all schools. The lower the number of rankings, sometimes the more private students are applying. That's just kind of the way it is sometimes. And then you'll see that they have, for their early, they have what's called a single action early admission, which is different than an early decision, which is binding. So you can see information here about their early admission. They do not offer early decision, but they do have this early action plan where you can choose them above other folks. And then the November 1st is the deadline for that. And then they'll let you know by December 15th. And I cover all the different types of admissions in a different video about that. All right, now I want to compare it to one last school, which is Loyola University Chicago. So their rubric is different. You see rigor, super important. They're barely considering rank. It's not a big deal to them. They do count your GPA and they do want to see test scores. They are looking at these other aspects as being important. So I hope with the contrast, you can see everybody's admissions decision-making is so different, and it's very indicative of the school. Completely indicative of the school. So for example, when I say that, like some schools have religious affiliation is very important to them. And you look at Loyola, and it's not. So it depends on the school and how they're positioning themselves. In terms of, they do require the SAT or ACT, so they are not test optional. They will take it without writing. So my advice to you is if you don't have to take the essay portion, don't take it. If you have to take it, take it. Not a big deal. For placement, they are going to use APs. They're not as concerned about the SAT subject tests, which we talk about in a different video. And then you can see where their scores are: 570 to 660, 550 to 650, 25 to 30. So why does all this matter? If you are trying to get merit money, and again, we talk about that in the money video, but if you want merit money, you want to be ahead of the school. You want to be in like the top 25th percentile. That really does help. When they look at you, they see how great you are. So hopefully this is helpful, and you can see that they do have, they do not offer early decision or early action. And this information, if you go through and you do it for each school that you're interested in, you will be able to tell right away if you're a reach, a match, or if it's a safe school. And if you check out the video on that and you look at this data, you'll be able to really put together a very nice and robust list. And my goal for you is to have as many options as possible so that you are making the choice here and they're not making the choice. So it's your choice because you're like, oh, I've got so many options. Instead of being like, ooh, one school selected me. So we don't want that to happen. Stay tuned. In part 3, we're going to talk about the money.